struck on the shoulder by a cannonball. He fell from his horse, and rumours spread like wildfire through the ranks of his men that he had been killed. But within a short time, the Williamite soldiers were to learn that there was no substance to the rumour. Their leader was alive, although throughout the battle he did have his luck.
William was wounded the night before the battle when he was reconnoitring along the banks of the Boyne, and a ricochet cannon shot hit him in the shoulder. In actual fact, news spread very, very quickly on both sides of the river that William had died, and bonfires were lit in both Dublin and Paris. He obviously didn't. He recovered from that to lead his troops into action on the next day, and he was constantly in the thick of that action. On two occasions he came very close to death. On the first, the cap of his pistol was shot off, and on the second, the heel of his jackboot was shot off by a musket ball.
King William had an army of about 35,000 men. Most Protestant nations were represented. About half the soldiers were Englishmen. A number of them had earned good reputations in several battlefields. The Germans, Dutch, Danes and Finns included some of the finest soldiers in Europe. Among the most committed soldiers of all were the French Huguenots, able to gain revenge for the cruel treatment they had received in France. Many famous Irish regiments, including the heroes of Londonderry and Enniskillen, also took their place in the Williamite army. King James had an army of about 25,000, 10,000 less than William. About a third were very good French cavalry and equally fine Irish cavalry. The Irish foot soldiers were poorly trained and lacked discipline. That weakness would be exposed later. On the morning of the 1st of July in the old-style calendar, the general call to arms woke the Williamite army. 3 hours later, Count Schomberg, son of William's marshal, set off to Rossnaree. The ford there was defended by only 500 men under Sir Neil O'Neill. They were soon overwhelmed, O'Neill being mortally wounded. James believed that this was to be the main attack and ordered half of his army to guard the flank. By doing so, he weakened the centre of his line at Oldbridge. The Jacobite soldiers there were outnumbered 3-1. At 10 o'clock on the 1st of July, William ordered his main attack. The Dutch Blue Guards marched towards the Boyne. It was during this stage of the battle that Marshal Schomberg and the Reverend George Walker were killed. The Jacobite army fought with tenacity, but they were heavily outnumbered as William ordered more men forward. The drum beat heralded the arrival of yet another regiment.
In terms of casualties, the Boyne itself was not big. You had something like 36,000 Williamite troops, 25,000 Jacobite troops. Casualties amounted to 1,000 Jacobites, about 500 Williamites, so it certainly wasn't a bloody battle by any stretch of the imagination. In terms of duration, it didn't last terribly long, but it was important in the sense that it won control of Dublin for William, and James fled Ireland. He was never again to set foot on British soil.
The Battle of the Boyne was significant in a military context. The victory for William also had far-reaching consequences.
If the Boyne had not happened, would Britain have had a revolution along the lines of the French Revolution 100 years later? Possibly. If the Boyne hadn't happened, what would have been the state of affairs in America with the Declaration of Independence? Because when you look at the Declaration of Independence, you're almost reading word for word the Bill of Rights of King William III. There were tremendous ramifications. On this, the 300th anniversary, Orangemen throughout the world have realised afresh just how important the Boyne was.
The importance of King William's victory at the Boyne was underlined on the 29th of September in the centre of Belfast, the Tercentenary Parade. The famous regiments that changed the course of history walked along the 20th century streets in their 17th century costumes. And included in the parade, the man they defeated, King James. The parade brought together the largest pageant of the entire tercentenary year, as thousands marched and many more watched. Orange leaders from all over the world walked shoulder to shoulder, a truly impressive gathering which may never be repeated. A short distance behind them, the young William and Mary. Earlier in the year, they had signalled that 1990 would be different. As the parade made its way through Belfast, the women of the Orange Association took their place. On occasions, they were hidden by a sea of umbrellas, stretching as far as the eye could see. Charting a course through the streets was the Mountjoy, which relieved the siege of Derry. This one built by Orangemen from Belfast. And making their first ever visit to Northern Ireland, members of Mohawk LOL 99. It was a long way from their homes on an Indian reserve in Canada, but they were left in no doubt about the welcome.
The people that we saw, I know what kind of a reception we were getting, it was terrific. And we've been on parades before, and we've got good receptions, but nothing like this. We've never had that many people watch us before.
Never seen a parade like it in my life, as long as I've been in the order. First time I ever seen anything like that at all.
I noticed an expression on people's face that, like as if that was the first time they ever seen an Indian. And it made me feel good. Proud to be an Indian and an Orange.
Right. It's one of the largest parades that I've ever participated in.
And the reception was enormous. There was a lot. We joked with that we're imitating Indians and everything, and that really made a person feel great, feel good.
70,000 Orange men were on parade, marching to the Strangford playing fields in South Belfast.
Ravages either of siege or battle, rather than surrender.
There, the Grand Master summarised the year's celebrations that were drawing to a close.
1690 was a memorable and historic year in Ireland, in Britain, in European and in world history. There are those who try to ignore that, but they can't. They can't write it out of history. They may try to say that it was a mere skirmish on an Irish riverbank between a Dutch king and an English king, his father-in-law, on Irish soil for an English crown. But there were far more things involved in that skirmish, as they call it, and men and women today throughout the world, not only in our Orange family, but those who have any sense of history, thank God that it was William won at the Boyne and not Louis and his vassal James II of England and the 7th of Scotland.
The tercentenary year was the commemoration of a battle fought 300 years ago. As Orange men took part in their marches and pageants, the debate about the Battle of the Boyne continued. The events surrounding one day's fighting on a riverbank in what is now the Irish Republic have led to many different views. One thing is certain, the battle changed the course of history all over the world, and will continue to have its influence, particularly through the Orange Order and its members, as they march into another century.